Uh, cor- okay, continues with the korbanos. So we have details of the korban shlomim. All right, now this is very important because each day we get another day closer to the third Beis Hamikdash, and as we can talk about a lot, how much the Beis Hamikdash korbanos plays a role in our Pesach Seder, and not just Pesach Seder, in the Erev Pesach. If I want to talk about that for a few minutes, I have to make sure it's just going to be for a few minutes. But a very important point to know for next Wednesday. Next Wednesday is Erev Pesach. And my first question to all of you is, Manishtana ha-Erev Yom Tov shel Erev Pesach mikol Erev Yom Tov. So the first answer to that is as follows. Lo aleinu, if somebody is sitting Shiva, going into any Yom Tov, going into Shavuos, going into Sukkot, Rosh Hashanah, any Yom Tov, they sit Shiva till as much time as they need to prepare for Yom Tov. They need 2 hours, they'll sit into 2 hours. They need 3 hours, they'll sit into 3 hours before. But the Yom Tov cancels Shiva. Why? Let's say somebody's sitting Shiva, Lo Aleinu, and they say, look, the person from whom I'm sitting Shiva was a good person. I want to continue my Shiva over Yom Tov. I'll observe Yom Tov, but I also want to keep Shiva. And the answer is you can't, because the two are diametrically opposed one to the other. How so? Shiva, by definition, is Avelos, mourning, and Yom Tov, by definition, is V'hoyisa ach sameach. You are to be not just happy, but ach sameach, especially happy. So the Jew has incredible control over his emotions. It's a very powerful concept. But even this control can only be managed one way or the other, meaning I am in a state at this moment of, or I'm in a state at this moment of. I can't, and no one can, maintain two diametrically opposed emotions at the same time. So on all the other Erev Yom Tov, I sit in the afternoon until the time that I need for Yom Tov. Good. However, when it comes to Erev Pesach, I get up, the one sitting Shiva gets up, Lo Aleinu, at Chatzos, which is mid the day. I didn't say noon, because this year, Erev Pesach, mid the day is 12:53 in New York, New Jersey area. So you would sit till 12:53. And if the person says, my house is clean for Pesach and all my cooking has been done, so allow me to sit till 4 or 5 o'clock, the answer is no. Why not? 2 words. Easy 2 words to remember. Jay, what's the 2 words? Korban Pesach. Now, Yossi is going to tell me we haven't had a Korban Pesach in almost 2,000 years. And you're right. But here goes. We live as if we have it, or it's such a strong remembrance, any way you want to say it, And when we had and will have that third Beis Hamikdash, the Korban Pesach is brought Erev Pesach in the afternoon. Do you hear what I'm saying? Again, in the afternoon. So the afternoon of Erev Pesach is not like any other Erev Yom Tov. It already has a status of Yom Tov. Why do I say Yom Tov? The calendar says that candle lighting, and we can't take in the Yom Tov of Pesach early. So even though Mendy has signed and asks people to sign a petition, because he is the chairman of the early Shabbos Minyan, which we've been having the last 2 weeks already, and we'll have, please God, throughout the summer, but you're not going to have it on Erev Pesach going into the Seder. So Rhode Island, the wise guy says, wait a second. Rumor has it that the sanctity of Shabbos is stronger than the sanctity of Yom Tov. Believe the rumor. You ready? However, there's something about Erev Pesach that trumps early Yom Tov, and that is, the Torah says, Ochlu es habasar, you are to eat the meat of the Korban Pesach balayla hazeh, on this night. That one verse changes everything. So therefore, I have to, and I treat the Erev Yom Tov, which is the day that they slaughtered the Korban Pesach. The Korban Pesach is eaten at night. It is slaughtered in the afternoon. And it is roasted right before night, okay? And as a result, I'm going to eat it when it's definitively night, not halachically night. When we take in the Shabbos early with Plag HaMincha, that's halachically night. And the exciting thing about that is that the Jew has the capacity to transform a Friday into a Shabbos. Now, not for everything. Abba goes to Shiur. This past week, for example, it was approximately 5:40 something that we started davening mincha. Figure 6 o'clock was anything after 6 halachically is Shabbos. But if a baby boy is born, let's say this past Friday at 6:30, and even though Abba said Mizmor Shir Liyom HaShabbos, so for Abba it was Shabbos already, he couldn't do any malacha, except he gets the phone call and he's going to run out of shul and he's going to drive his wife to the hospital, and she gives birth before sunset, okay, which was approximately 7:15. Then when is the bris? Even though Abba already accepted Shabbos, the bris is Friday, because the ability for us to add on to doesn't change the day. The day itself is still Friday, but the Jew, as we say in Vishamru, Vishamru B'nai Yisrael as a Shabbos is so beautiful. La'asos es Shabbos. What do you mean la'asos es Shabbos? Now this is a very important point. When it comes to Shabbos, Shabbos is kvi v'kaima. What do those two words mean? Shabbos is set and it's automatic. Every seventh day is Shabbos, ready or not. Whether man is ready, whether he's stuck in traffic, God forbid, etc. The bottom line is, here it comes. Hashem sanctified every seventh day. So the seventh day begins, we know, with sunset. The ability of the Jew to take in Shabbos earlier is based on the teachings of Rabbi Yehuda that we've been spending quite a bit of time on in our Monday morning Shiurim in the Gemara Brachos. Of course, that's where you have 27a, 27b, this very important principle. Okay, so now, just as I could take in Shabbos early, I should be able to take in the Yom Tov of Pesach early. And the only reason why I can't is because all the mitzvos of the night are equated to the Pesach, meaning Kiddush. Watch this. Kiddush, my friends, is to be b'makom su'uda. So what does that mean? Let's say I win the lottery, and now I'm going to build a beautiful new house. And I say to my wife, I say, Shev, in this new house, there's going to be a room just for your hadlakas, Neir, Shabbos, and Yom Tov. You have your own lighting of candles room. And the answer is no. You're supposed to light candles where you're going to eat. Because originally, before electricity, without the Shabbos candles, without the Yom Tov candles, you're in the dark. So the whole purpose of Shabbos candles is, one, primarily practical, that we're going to be able to eat by the light of, but since Thomas Edison provided us with electric lights, so why are we lighting Shabbos candle? So the answer is Fiddler on the Roof. Come on. Tradition, good. And what does that mean? It means that because, listen carefully, the Karaites only believed in one Torah. And the end of Shmos, but the beginning of Parshas Vayakhel, the Torah says you are not to light fire in your house on Shabbos. So the Karaites took Shabbos to be dark, cold. And we say, no, you can't light the fire on Shabbos, but you can light the fire before Shabbos. So when Shabbos candles are lit and you come home and the table is set beautifully with Shabbos candles, there's a much deeper, especially today when I have the electric light in the room, a much deeper understanding of your Shabbos candles is, I affirm, I believe that there are two Torah. There is the written Torah and there is the oral Torah. Okay? So the lighting of the Shabbos candles with a bracha is another way of saying that we accept the Torah Shabbat Peh, the oral law, etc. Okay, so
Rabbi.
Yes.
Yeah, to drive home your point about Erev Pesach, because I'm always looking at the schedules. Kolamai, Friday night,
Yes,
at Shvi and Achron Shal Pesach, all will have an early Shabbos.
correct.
All three of them.
But as long as we understand why, because on the night of the Pesach Seder, we're governed. Of course, listen carefully, everybody. What does it mean, Kiddush? So just as my wife is not going to have that room special for candle lighting, watch this. I'm going to have, come on, what's fair and fair. I want a room just for Kiddush. No, Kiddush has to be, listen carefully now, b'makom seuda, where we're going to eat the meal, because the Kiddush is the prelude, introduction to the meal. So where we're going to eat, that's where we're going to have Kiddush. So there's not a special room for the Kiddush. And b'makom seuda means not only in a place, but at a time when you can eat the meal. So when we make Kiddush, we make Shabbos early, we know that ideally, to satisfy all opinions, you should have, at the end of your meal, for your dessert, a piece of challah with the dessert. No, it's not an afikoman. I don't want to start a whole new minhag. We're not calling that piece of challah at the end of the meal the afikoman. But what are we saying? That since you're supposed to have 3 meals on Shabbos, and you're going to say to me, hey, Yudin, if you can make Kiddush before it gets dark, why can't you have your entire meal before it gets dark? So that's interestingly based on the Rambam, who says that Kiddush, which is a description of Shabbos, the praise of Shabbos, the uniqueness of Shabbos, that can be said before the actual Shabbos day. But, okay, so when it comes to Kiddush, it's not a problem. But the meal, we want at least one part of the meal, one piece of challah, eaten at a time when it is definitively night. So as long as if I start my meal early before sunset, which is what we do when we make the early minyan, but as long as at the end of the meal I eat a piece of challah, a kazayas, technically speaking, that's your minimum meal. Okay, so now,
Rabbi,
yes.
when you go to a hotel, they have a separate room for candle lighting. Everybody lights in that room and nobody sees the candles then.
Okay, so I am not going to say that you shouldn't go away. Okay, it's your choice. It is a problem. So here's what I would suggest. Bring with you, this would be second best. I'm not going to tell anybody to light a little flame. I won't even tell you to light one of those tea lights, which are quite safe, in your room. Because, Hershon, I am renting you, if that's the proper word, right? These rooms for Pesach, and I'm renting it to you under the condition that you're not going to light a flame in the room. So you can't. So the next best thing I would suggest, Yossi, and for everybody else, and tell your friends that are going away, that this can only work for the first night of Yom Tov. It used to be that you had, at least in the bathroom, an incandescent light or a lamp or something in the room. There are no longer incandescent bulbs, lights, etc. If any of you are on the good side of Roy Barth, tell him that, he should sell you one of those antiques called an incandescent bulb. And if you can light that, if not, they have these Shabbos candelabras that are used for a hospital, etc. We're looking for any kind of incandescent light that you can light in your room. That's safe. That's not going to bother anybody. And that you can make a bracha on b'di'evet. You're in a b'di'evet situation when you're in a hotel. But you're right. You've got me, Yossi. There's nothing I can do for you for the second night of Yom Tov. And therefore, I'm going to tell you, I love you. And it's okay if you don't light Shabbos candles, Yom Tov candles on the second night of Yom Tov. Now, you've got the same thing this year because it's 3 nights. And this year, how could I not light Shabbos candles? So the answer is that it's one big b'di'evet, and I would say that you can bench licht going into Shabbos on any electric light. I would not use Shem v'Malchus. I would say Baruch Atah, Asher Kidshanu b'mitzvosav v'tzivanu l'hadlik ner shel Shabbos. That's what I would do, but I wouldn't say it with God's name. But since we have light all around us, so we are safe, technically speaking, if you leave a light on in the bathroom, in your hotel room, etc., then technically speaking, we have satisfied the obligation of having light. But you're right. That's one of the pluses for staying home. Okay. All right. So now, having said that, let's get started. And that is as follows. In this week's parsha, I have the Korban Shlomim. I had the Korban Shlomim this yesterday in Vayikra, but more about the Korban Shlomim in this week's parsha. Shlomim, as the name itself implies, is, quote, peace. And the peace is, interestingly, P-E-A and P-I-E. What does that mean? The P-I-E means that everybody gets a piece of the action of this animal. Who's the everybody? The Mizbeach, part of the offering, is burnt on the Mizbeach. Part goes to Mr. Cohen, who officiated over this korban, and part goes to the Yisrael, the Jew, he, she, whichever, is bringing the korban. So, let's say I got engaged. I'm very happy. So nowadays we'll give a kiddush. When we had a Beis Hamikdash, I'd say, you're going to be in Yerushalayim? Are you going to be in a state of purity? I'm bringing Korban Shlomim. It's my way of saying thank you, Hashem. Good. So watch. That Korban Shlomim is eaten by either the Kohen and his family, or the one who's bringing the Korban and his family, anywhere in Yerushalayim, one, for a period of 2 days and 1 night. So if I'm bringing my Korban Shlomim today, Sunday, I can eat it Sunday, Sunday night, and Monday till sundown. Okay? 2 days, 1 night, my Korban Shlomim. Good. Now watch. There is a Korban Shlomim, because that's the heading. Within that heading is called a Korban Toda. Toda is specifically for 4 individuals, which I'll give you in a moment, that you're saying these 4, thank you, Hashem. But these 4 persons, and I'll tell you who they are right now, easy acrostic. At the end of every Shmona Esrei, we say, V'chol ha'chayim, ha-ches yud yud mem, chayim. What does it stand for? Chole, if a person is sick. Yam, if a person crossed the sea. Come on. Third one is Yisurin. The person was in a dangerous situation. And Mem, the person traveled successfully through a desert. So these 4 persons had to bring a Korban Toda. Today, we recite Birkas HaGomel. So if somebody, thank God, recovers, we're not talking from the sniffles or an ingrown toenail. Somebody was lo aleinu, heart attack, etc., cured from cancer. Those kinds of individuals will recite a Birkas HaGomel. Now watch. When we had a Beis Hamikdash, she brought a korban, and let me tell you, the korban, once again, part on the Mizbeach, part from Mr. Cohen and the one bringing it. However, it had the meat, the sheep, the goat, the cow. You ready? And 40 loaves, 40 lechem. 30 of these lechem are matzah. 10 of these lechem are chametz. So I have a total of 40 loaves. So rumor has it that no one person can eat an animal and 40 loaves within a lesser period of time. I told you under normal conditions, a shlomim is eaten for 2 days, 1 night. This korban, the korban toda, is eaten just for 1 day, 1 night. If I bring it today at 11 o'clock in the morning, so by mid the night tonight, all of the meat, all of the loaves have to be eaten. There's no way that you can do it yourself and your immediate family. So the Netziv explains beautifully. So what do? We invite other people. Friends of mine, are you going to be in Yerushalayim? No. I'm going to be there, but I'm Tomei. I went to a funeral last week, and I can't be there. So I'm going to stop. Forgive me. Strangers. Now, these strangers have been to Yerushalayim, and they're familiar with this. Can you come to my Seudas Hoda'ah, my meal of Thanksgiving tonight? So if I am Tahor, right? I've been purified by the ashes of the Parah Aduma. If I come, wonderful. Now, why does the Torah give you more to eat in less time? Because we want you to invite people, and when people are there, hey, tell us why we're here for, what happened? So you tell them, I was sick, I crossed the sea, I was in a dangerous situation, God forbid, mugged, or finally I crossed the desert. Now listen carefully. So we want a larger audience so that there's more of a Kiddush Hashem, more of a sanctification of God's name by spreading the good news of what happened to him, the miracle that happened to him. He survived the sea, he survived the desert, etc. Now, here comes the punchline. So this is a truism throughout the year. Now, fasten your seatbelts, everybody. And we are now up to, at the Pesach Seder, Shulchan Orech. So I've been waiting for this all day because you're not supposed to eat much before the Seder. And until you get to Shulchan Orech, you are hungry. So we're about to start. And Yossi says, well, what do you want now? Because Yudin's talking a lot. And he says, I just want you to know, everybody, that you're not just eating a Yom Tov meal, you're eating, listen carefully, and you can share this, Nathan, with your company, that we're eating tonight a Seudas Hoda'ah. Hoda'ah means Thanksgiving, meaning the meal that accompanies the Korban Toda. We can't bring the actual Korban Toda because we don't have a Beis HaMikdash, but the idea is precisely the same. Why? What are we doing on the night of Pesach, Robert Eisler? On the night of Pesach, we are reliving the past. So what are we reliving? That tonight we're celebrating that we, the Jewish people, went through all four. We were one, Chole. Many of us were sick at the time that we left Egypt. Egypt did not provide us with any, quote, medical treatment, etc. So many of us were sick at the time that we left Egypt. Secondly, Yisurin, which means that we were open to physical danger. Lo Aleinu, they're drowning. The babies, the Jewish babies, is a horrific danger. They're persecuting us, was a danger, literally, to our lives. So that's the second one. The third is we crossed the sea 7 days later, right? Shvi Shel Pesach, Kriyas Yamsuf. And the fourth one was, Midbar. We went safely through the desert. So therefore, our connection of the Parsha, which talks about the Korban Toda, is really the meal at the Pesach Seder, a Seudas Hoda'ah, a meal of thanksgiving. Good. So now, let's talk a little bit about the meal that we have at the Pesach Seder, and specifically how many matzos are we putting at the Pesach Seder? In other words, do we have the usual Lechem Mishnah, or do we have 3 tonight? Now, don't tell me that your Seder plate has room for 3 matzos. That's because the majority of the Jewish people follow the practice of having 3 matzos. Why do I need 3? And why can't I have 2 like every Friday night? So every Friday night I have 2 because the Torah uses that term, Lechem Mishnah, which means double amount because of the mun. So it's amazing. The mun, which came down in the desert for 40 years, we have 2 challahs since then to remember the miracle of Hashem providing for us in the desert. Now here we go. The Torah coming from the Kriyas HaTorah of Achron Shel Pesach, chapter 16 in the book of Devarim, Parsuk Gimel, tells us that the word, as the Torah calls matzah, lechem oni. Now, oni should be spelled ayin, vav, nun, yud. It means the bread, literally the bread of persecution. However, it is written in the Torah, lechem ayin, nun, yud, which is read and understood to mean oni. So it's a slight difference in sound, o or o, but it's different. If the Baal Koreh on the last day of Pesach will say, lechem oni, we're going to correct him. It's oni. However, listen carefully, he's not wrong. So if he's a bit of an arrogant person, he's going to say, excuse me, bring a Gemara, Psachim, page 115b, 116a, and you're going to see that the Gemara understands it as oni, which means a poor man's bread. And a poor man's bread is flour and water, and it's for that reason that even a Sephardi who eats egg matzah during Pesach, even a Sephardi doesn't eat egg matzah at his Seder in order to satisfy the mitzvah of matzah. Why? Because of the ingredients. The ingredients are flour and water, and a person who, thank God, is not impoverished will add, if he like, eggs and other goodies to the matzah. So therefore, on the night of the Pesach Seder, everybody agrees it is oni, but it's pronounced oni. So listen carefully. A poor man, says the Gemara, only eats a half a loaf, a half a matzah. Why? He's always concerned about later on, will I have enough for later on? So he eats half now and puts the other half away. Okay? So, therefore, on the night of the Pesach Seder, we have to fulfill our mitzvah of matzah with a broken one. In other words, before we eat the matzah, we break it at yachatz, kadesh urchatz, karpas yachatz. Before we start the magid, we break the middle matzah, or you'll see in a moment which matzah, we'll get to that in a moment. We break the matzah before we get to magid, and one of the many explanations of lechem oni is lechem she'onim olav dvarim harbe. Now, this is a separate, very interesting idea, and that is Kiddush all year long, and on the night of the Pesach Seder, is recited over a cup of wine. Are we reciting the Haggadah over a cup of wine? What's that? Could you just talk straight? So the answer is primarily no. You'll see why I said it like that. So what are we reciting the matzah over? I'm sorry, what are we reciting the Haggadah? What are we telling the story over? And the answer is matzah. What does that mean in simple English? That the matzah should be uncovered. Now, whether it means having matzah on the table or specifically the half of the matzah that you have broken, that half of matzah should be exposed while you're reciting the Haggadah. And we continue. Going through the whole Haggadah, it should be said over. So there is, just as on every Friday night, the wine, which is celebratory. We're celebrating with wine. So too, we have the Haggadah recited in conjunction with the piece of matzah. Now, I have to tell you, you're going to say to yourself, oh, come on, cover the matzah, uncover the matzah. What's going on here? So this happens to be, now watch, today we are so privileged and fortunate that there are many, many Haggadahs, right? Many with commentary, and it's obviously suggested that maybe each year treat yourself to a new Haggadah. But the main thing is, because we want to not just say the minimum of the Haggadah, we want to expand on it. This is interesting, that's interesting. Good, now watch. When we didn't have, before printing, when no one had Haggadah, one person had Haggadah, etc. So what did everybody else do? So listen carefully. When you hear, you're all invited to my house Friday night. I'm going to make Kiddush for all of you. And hopefully you're going to enjoy the meal, the company. And when Heisler gets home, he says, ay, ay, ay. I heard Kiddush, but I didn't drink Kiddush. I didn't make Kiddush. So the answer is no. But you're listening to my Kiddush, by your having in mind to be Yotzei, you're fulfilling your obligation of Kiddush with mine, and me having you in mind. Whoever's listening, that's perfect, okay? So that is Kiddush that you satisfy through somebody else. Shomeya, when you listen, Ki'oneh, it's like you said it. Listen carefully. You come to my house for the Pesach Seder. I apologize. The one thing I forgot to get was Haggadahs. And we only have one Haggadah in the house. Okay? Now what? So if you listen to my Haggadah, it's the same as you're listening to my Kiddush. It's the same as you're listening to my Havdalah. I'm sure in all your houses, not everybody makes Kiddush, one person. Not everybody makes Havdalah, one person. And so is true, listen carefully, regarding the Haggadah. The Haggadah is a biblical mitzvah. V'gadato lebincha, you are to, come on, say it over to your children on this night. Doesn't mean children, it means others. Ideally, especially when they're younger and in the house, you're to tell it to them. But when they are mature and oftentimes out of the house, so the answer is you're telling it to others, friends, family, and even yourself. Unfortunately, it shouldn't happen again. At the pandemic, many, many people were literally home alone for the Pesach Seder. At such a time, you had to recite the Haggadah out loud. Not enough to read it with your eyes and understand it, but you have to recite it. Now, here's the punchline. Oy, oy, oy. We're short on Haggadahs. But you know what? Aaron Talbot, who usually comes this year, whatever the reason, cannot. The gentleman who's blind, can he recite the Haggadah for us? He knows it by heart. And the answer is no. And that's a very interesting point. Why not? Because, listen carefully, the verse which talks about V'yigadeta lebincha, and you are to tell this over to your children. V'yigadeta lebincha bayom hahu, on that day, lemor, saying, ba'avur zeh, because of this, right? Hotziacha Hashem miMitzrayim, God took us out of Egypt. Now watch. What is the zeh? The Haggadah says, B'shah, zeh means you can point to it. B'shah sheyesh matzah umoror, I need the matzah moror on the table. Listen carefully. Munachem efanecha. So since the moror today is rabbinic, because we no longer have a Korban Pesach, so moror is one of those mitzvos that will be upgraded in the future. Right now, moror is coach. When we get the third Beis Hamikdash, the moror is going to be first class. The moror will be a biblical mitzvah. And pretty much, to the best of my ability, there are not too many mitzvos which have this status. And the reason why it is that way is because there is no separate verse telling us to eat moror on the night of the Pesach Seder. Moror,
Rabbi,
one second, Bobby. Moror is found in conjunction with the Korban Pesach. No tiki, no washi, said the Chinese laundry man. No Korban Pesach, no moror. As opposed to matzah, which also accompany the Korban Pesach, but there is a separate, independent pasuk, which says, "Bo'erev tochlu matzos," that you ought to eat matzah on the night of the Pesach Seder, and for that reason, matzah, even without the Korban Pesach, is biblical. So why am I telling you all this? If there is no Haggadah, and the blind man says, "I know it," so you're going to listen, and you're going to satisfy your obligation with his recitation of the Haggadah. We don't want to make him feel bad, but the answer is no.
Rabbi,
1 second, because he can't, let me just finish, because he can't see it. So big deal. What is his, unfortunately, not being able to see the matzah and moror? Why can't I satisfy my obligation? He can make Kiddush, because Kiddush doesn't have that obligation that you should have to be able to see the wine. It goes without saying that most often that's going to be the case. But he can make Kiddush for us, and he can lead the benching for us, because that he's obligated. But because of a technicality of Bavur Zeh, all right, he cannot recite the Haggadah for us. Okay,
Rabbi,
what's your questions? Go ahead. I think
he doesn't necessarily need to do it from memory. He has a Braille Haggadah that he can feel it.
No.
So that's not good enough?
No, because the Braille Haggadah doesn't allow him to see the matzah and moror. Bavur Zeh means you can point to it. Okay, several places in the Torah where the word Zeh means to point. I can show you, but not now. So, having said, okay, who else?
I had a question, but you answered it. Thank you, Rabbi.
Very good. Okay, so now let's just continue. All right. So the idea is every Friday night we have Lechem Mishnah, because the mun came down double. Mishnah means 2, and we commemorate the miracle of the mun. Now, I have to have a broken piece in order to make my bracha of al achilas matzah. Matzah has to be eaten over a broken piece. Good. Now, so what's the story? On the one hand, Yom Tov, like Shabbos, requires 2 loaves. On the other hand, and that's for the purpose of the Shabbos and Yom Tov Seudah. In other words, my meal on Friday night on Shabbos day, my meal on Yom Tov has to have 2 loaves. Okay, so now watch this. How do we resolve the problem? It's supposed to be broken. It's supposed to be 2. So therefore, listen carefully. Tosfos, everybody wants to know the source, I can give it to you. The Rush, one of the major commentaries, Rishonim, and the Mordechai, listen carefully, say that how do we do these 2 conflicting issues? Not a problem. Okay? Therefore, I have 1 broken matzah for lechem oni, and I'm going to have 2 other matzos for the lechem mishnah. So I start off with 3, I break 1, I'm left with 2.5, and that is the protocol for tonight. Clear? This is the opinion of Tosfos, and this is what a majority of the Jewish world follows. Okay? Good. However, if you were, Yossi, you were so lucky, you were invited to the Rambam's home. And I ask you, okay, he couldn't have had everybody. Yossi won the raffle to be a guest at the Rambam. So tell me about it. Tell me about it. All right, I'll tell you. No dayenu. What do you mean, no dayenu? What, he was in a rush to eat? Why didn't the Rambam say dayenu? I'm not going to answer that. I want you to come to the next class. Otherwise, if I tell you everything today, you're not going to come back. The Rambam didn't have dayenu. What else? Anything? Oh, yes. Let me tell you this. Guess what? The Rambam had only 2 matzahs. No. Sam says, well, matzah was expensive. No. Only 2 matzahs. So the question is, why? Because,
Lechem oni.
so he says, so listen carefully. So whereas, now interesting, I love this. Normally you would say, do as your father, your grandfather. Now Tosfos had big shoulders because Tosfos was Rashi's grandson. Okay, so no, sorry, Rashi and Tosfos go together on this. So here goes. The Rambam is the one that says that 2 matzahs, because tonight the Seudah is governed by, lechem oni, and the 2 matzahs, what, 1.5 matzah. We start with 2 like every Shabbos, every Yom Tov. And the fact that when you're going to make the hamotzi, remember, you're only going to have 1.5, not a problem. Because tonight, the lechem oni trumps. It overrules and overrides the need for lechem mishnah, which you would need by the time of the hamotzi. When we get to hamotzi, we have 2.5. 2.5, the 2 for the hamotzi. We'll put the bottom one down over the 1.5. We're going to eat the matzah. But listen carefully. I want you to know. Now, I'm telling you this more for interesting show and tell rather than change. Now, if anybody on the screen or any one of your friends are a little bit CHEAP, and I'm looking to save a matzah, so do you know who my Rebbe is? I follow the Rambam. And you know, he'll say he lived a long time ago, which he did. You know who else I follow? I follow Rav Moshe Feinstein. And you know who else I follow? Rabbi Soloveitchik. So believe it or not, these 2 giants of our past generation, what makes them a giant is they're not yentas. They don't look at Sam Heller and say, well, whatever Sam is doing, I am going to do. No, nothing to do with Sam Heller. Nothing to do with what we do. But they felt so strongly, like the Rambam, meaning that tonight is a night which is governed by lechem oni, that they only had 2, and therefore, remember, I'm not telling you this that you should change your custom. Whatever your father did, and I imagine most of our families had 3 matzah, as I do, and that's what we do. So all we're getting from this class is, hey, it's fascinating why there are 2 different customs. The prevalent custom is the Rambam, and I want you to know something very interesting. Usually, the Shulchan Aruch, who was a Sephardi, Rav Yosef Karo, usually Rav Yosef Karo follows his Rebbe, the Rambam. Now, when I say his Rebbe, they lived approximately 400 years apart. The Rambam coming first, and then Rav Yosef Karo in the 1500s wrote the Shulchan Aruch. He wrote it, and it was accepted by all of Jewry, but especially the Sephardim. The Ramah, Ramosha Israelis, he wrote what is known as the Glass, the commentary on the Shulchan Aruch for the Ashkenazi community. So especially at Pesach time, there are very major differences between the Mechaber, which means the author of the Shulchan Aruch, and the Ramah. What comes to mind is, now interesting, the Mechaber didn't follow the Rambam and say 2 matzos. So really, the great majority take 3 and don't change, because I told you about the Rambam, who was a giant in his day, and Rav Moshe and the Rav, giants. And it's interesting, they were related to each other, the Rav and Rav Moshe. And okay, so now, number 1, the difference between Sephardim and Ashkenazim is 1, what meat are you eating at your Pesach Seder? Or are you eating meat at all? The Mechaber goes to one extreme and says, since the Pesach, Korban Pesach, was meat and roasted, Sephardim specifically eat roasted meat to commemorate. Why? All year long, I like chicken. Tonight, I'm a Sephardi, I'm going to eat roasted meat because I want to remember the Korban Pesach, which had to be roasted. And interestingly, Ashkenazim say just the opposite. We don't want to give the impression that we are eating, quote, a korban and something related to a korban, and therefore we eat chicken, because the korban could not be chicken, or I'll eat meat in such a way that it's not roasted. Hold on just 1 second. I'll be finishing told Tuesday in about 5 minutes, all right? 5 minutes. Okay. So, and the famous, but understand why. In case we don't get a chance to talk about this, again, listen carefully. What's fascinating everybody about matzah is that matzah must be made only from the 5 grains that could be chametz. What does that mean? Wheat, barley, rye, oats, and spelt. These are your 5 grains, out of which the matzah must be made. Okay? Now, the only difference between chametz and matzah is time. If it's baked within 18 minutes, you're good to go. It's called matzah. Anything beyond 18 minutes, you can't eat it on Pesach. Okay? So now I know my 5 grains. So everybody ideally should eat matzah made of wheat, because that's considered the choicest of the 5 grains. However, I am wheat intolerant. So what am I going to do? It's going to cost me more because it's a custom-made product, but I'll eat a matzah of oats, of rye, or spelt, whichever my stomach, or barley, whatever my stomach can tolerate, period. Okay, now, if I make a matzah out of rice, if I make a matzah out of corn, everybody agrees I do not get the mitzvah of matzah. It might look like a matzah. I don't know. I've never had one. It might taste like a matzah, but I don't get the mitzvah of matzah because it's made from something that can't become chametz. So if that's the case, say the Sfardim, it by definition, it can't become chametz, then why can't I eat it on Pesach? So you know something, everybody? It makes sense. So if I were a Sephardi, I would be enjoying rice on Pesach, okay? And without feeling, excuse me, any guilt. It can't be chametz. Remember that. It's very important. It can't be chametz because chametz can only come from the 5 grains. No. So Nathan is going to bother me later and say, so if that's the case, why can't we eat what's called kitnios, which is legume, the legumes, and specifically rice and corn? Why can't we Ashkenazim eat it? So the key, now there's a lot that has to go into this. So the first thing I'm going to tell you is the Ashkenazim were more nervous than the Sephardim. Okay, I don't know if psychologists today will substantiate that, but what do I mean by that? It means that all year long, very, very important, all year long, I have mommy making a chont, the young child or grandchild is standing there watching, and the child sees mommy's pouring in different things to the pot. Next thing we know, the baby, 1-year-old, 1.5, emulates, standing there, takes its bottle, and a few drops of milk go into the pot of chont. So you call your local Orthodox rabbi, and the rabbi is going to ask, what was there? Only a little bit was there. He didn't put in the potatoes and the barley and the water, right? All there was a little, assuming this is what happened, just the meat was there and the little bit of milk fell on the meat. We have a major problem. You might have to throw out your meat. However, the baby's timing is perfect. I've got my water in the pot and I've got potatoes and everything else there. And then 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 drops of milk come in. What's the halacha, everybody? 2 words, bitul barov. The majority in the pot is going to nullify, you ready? This few drops of milk that came in. Now don't tell me afterwards, Yossi, this tasted good. Next Friday, I'm going to put, no. You can't put even 1 drop in intentionally. But if this is what happened, then the halacha says, bitul barov, 2 words which you must know for the midterm. Bitul barov means that the majority nullifies the minority. In other words, if I give that chunk to a non-kosher expert, a chef, to taste, I say, and I know I put in salt, I know I put in this. I say, do you taste that? Yeah. Do you taste that? No, I didn't put in pepper, let's say, for argument's sake. But I ask him, do you taste the milk? No. Good. You can eat it. You follow? Because of beetle. On Pesach, now, Mendy, make a note, because it's getting late, but I wanted to make up for the beginning. I came late, I'm sorry. Listen carefully. On Pesach, picture a pot, or you can't even call it a pot, in a hotel, which is cooking for hundreds of people. And 1 Cheerio, put your hand down, Sam. Sam wants to know, how did that 1 Cheerio get in the kosher for Pesach kitchen in the first place? But that 1 Cheerio somehow finds its way into the soup, if we're dealing with honest, reputable people, we apologize. The owner has to say, but there was an incident with the soup. Whatever he says, however he says it, we cannot serve the soup on Pesach. If anybody wants to take home a goodie bag after Pesach of some chicken soup, okay, but you can't serve it on Pesach. Why? Because on Pesach, we don't say Bitul Barov. And the reason, if anybody wants to know why, is because something like milk and meat is never kosher as a combination. So as soon as it happens, we have to decide, can or cannot the mixture be rectified. But chametz, if you just wait till after Pesach, you can eat chametz. Rumor has it that we eat chametz 51 weeks out of the year. Good. So you can't, so what are we afraid? We're afraid for even a trace, strong word. Now this fear of a trace is only on Pesach. So listen carefully. Whoever is not so careful, because let's say, okay, I go to the supermarket and farmland dairies and 51 weeks out of the year. Can I buy farmland dairies? Yes. Should I maybe buy Chol Yisrael? So if it's close in price, 10 cents more, okay, whatever it is, but I don't think it's 10 cents more. If you have a choice, you should preferably take Chol Yisrael. Okay, if I have a choice. If I don't have a choice, I can certainly drink what Rav Moshe calls Cholav companies, because there is an inspector. No, here, what happens? Leo, where are you taking Miriam today? You're going on a tour of farmland dairies. Very nice. So they finish the tour, and very nice, very interesting. And the person leading the tour says, any questions? So Leo raises his hands. What would you like, sir? Where are the pigs? What? He didn't hear you. Say it again. Now, what's the primary reason years ago that old McDonald had a farm, and on his farm he had some? Now, clearly, you might not be able to even, it might enhance the taste, you would know the taste, but when you come to him and say, can I have my gallon of milk, etc., am I getting what? Cow's milk? Or has he mixed in a little bit of other milk, which is not kosher for us? So therefore, it required hashgacha. It required supervision, because under normal conditions, who's going to watch McDonald when he milks his cow and gets milk from others? How do I know he doesn't mix one with the other? Okay, and we can't, drink the other's milk, etc.
Rabbi, question.
But nowadays, I don't need a rabbi there. 1 second, hold on, because Uncle Sam sends his, delegates and supervisors, whatever it is. So it's not because he's afraid of a rabbi. He's afraid of the state or government shutting him down. That's called mirtas. He's afraid. So therefore, it's not worth it to him to put a little bit of a pig's milk. And that's why when Leon says, where's the pig? Maybe the answer is there are no pigs for miles around. So I don't have to worry. But listen carefully now. Mates, remember, I'm telling you that even a trace. So you're going to tell me, over there, my friends, is the left, it is the wheat, and over there is the rice. Now, is it possible that in yesteryear there was a mixture of one with the other? So the answer is yes. Okay. Is it possible? Yes. Is it probable? No. So because we are so strict on Pesach, we have many key word in English is siogim. In Hebrew is a siog. A siog is a fence around the law. Okay, so that's why, interestingly, when it came to what I said, nervous, the Ashkenazim were more nervous, and the Sephardim somewhat less. And I close with this, that not only at Food Showcase a little bit, they're quite good. And they have walked off kitnios and for Sephardim, but especially I hear from people in Israel, my sister in Hanof, etc. You have to be very careful when you go food shopping Pesach time in Israel, because the big letters, kosher lePesach, and it is. But then in small letters, it says le'ochle kitnios, meaning for Sephardim. So you have to make sure that the kosher lePesach that you're buying, especially in Israel, is for, quote, everybody, not just Sephardim. Okay, we're going to stop over here.
Okay.
Thank
Have a
you.
good day, Rabbi. I gotta go, so I'm shutting it down. Okay.
Yeah, you're not the first. And I apologize. Oh, listen, yeah, if anybody is available, she was a very nice woman, Mrs. Brown, Sarah Brown. You should be getting information. It's local. It's at, I think, City Park, 2:30 this afternoon, 2:15, I think, 2:15 this afternoon. Have a good day, everybody. And have a good, I'll see you tomorrow morning. Look at that.
Have a good
Yeah.
day.
Bye-bye.